Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and recently, as always, there are tournaments in the Pokemon TCG, and normally the results aren't, super interesting in my opinion. Not that there isn't interesting stuff to get from it, but a lot of it kind of reassures like existing opinions and stuff like that. However, the most recent one, this one in Mexico, had some really interesting decks in it that I thought were, just cool. So today I'm going to be talking about those decks and my updates on where I think decks are in the metagame as well. Though most of it is going to be talking about the new decks and how good I actually think they are. They're not necessarily brand new with new cards, but they are decks that haven't really been that popular that are going to kind of come up and will be parts of the metagame going forwards, I imagine. In terms of a turn, this was the one in the US, I think it was. Yeah, it was a week before. So this was just over a week ago, and you can see the results here, and they are not very interesting. There are a few decks that I'm not super sure on. Honestly, the Goldingo Dragapult deck, I don't think there's that much to say about it. I think Dragapult is better. If you want to do it, you could play it, and it's somewhere in between Goldingo and Dragapult, I guess. But anyways, I don't have that much to say about that deck. I'm not going to be covering that deck. And my top 10 before was Archaludon, Dragapult in this tier. I've also added them into actual tiers here. But Archaludon and Dragapult in A plus. Again, the top 10 is all A tier. That's not necessarily like the A tier has to have 10 decks, but that's how it happened to pan out, which is nice for a top 10 list. But I have these two in the same order. Then I have Raging Bolt, then I have Terror Box, then I have Gardevoir, then I have Trapghost, then Charizard. I actually switched Gardevoir and Trapghost, but again, the decks within the tiers are very similar. Then A minus tier, I have Goldengo for Alligator, and then I had Hops, but I decided to move that down just a little bit and then added in this new Blissey deck, which I'll talk about, which I think is really cool. Honestly, these decks, once it gets a little below this, it gets a little harder to rank, in my opinion, because the decks become very different from each other and all have like major weaknesses. But we have these decks. I won't be talking about like Cerealite, which I added, or like Frostlass, but it will be talking about this deck, the Joltik deck, I guess is what people are calling it, or like Maridon, or what's here it's Joltic Box, and it shows an image of Joltik and Pikachu EX, and Iron Hands EX is also a big part of it. I played this deck a few times, and then I played the Blissey deck a little bit more. Again, I won't be talking about these other decks. Honestly, once it gets down here, I just like ranking these. They're not super strong, but these rankings, if like these lower ones like look kind of weird to you, I'll be changing them at some point and making them bit better and probably adding some more decks. So if there are decks you want me to add to this tier list, just tell me down below. And there are a few that I'm just not really sure of at all. Not gonna lie, including Control, which I have like no idea. And Roaring Moon. Roaring Moon's a good deck that I need to get to. It's not insane, but that is probably the best of the decks that aren't on here. But let's talk about Blissey. Blissey is really cool. Blissey is a deck. Well, it's Blissey EX with Monkey Dory. It does play some other Pokemon to attack with. Notably, I will say Cornerstone Master Ogerpon EX is a really interesting Pokemon that we'll talk about in just a moment. That is, I think we talk about it in an interesting way, not like a Badoo, it's ruining the game way. Badoo's not necessarily ruining the game, but it's not so fun. I think Ogerpon's more fun than Badoo, but I could see a disagreement. Anyways, Blissey EX here has a bunch of different things about it that makes it really interesting. It has 300 HP on a stage 1. 300 HP on a stage 1, I guess, is high, but the good stage 1s are. Our Caledon EX has 300 HP, right? And then Gholdengo, I guess, is better than Blissey. I have it above it on the tier list, so that's like pretty good. And that's 260, which I thought was like the standard. But 260 is now like low for the good stage 1 EXs. 300 isn't like absurdly high, but it's good. And then you have the ability Happy Switch, which lets you once during a turn move an energy, a basic energy from one of your Pokemon to another one of your Pokemon. Side note, this on Pokemon DG Live I found to be really janky because the way that they changed they added the like click to move thing. So then that also interacts with like the dragging stuff around it. It's kind of weird and it's kind of hard to figure out which Pokemon's which Pokemon. It's not like that bad, and it's mostly a skill issue on my part, but that's a little weird. Anyways, Blissey EX's ability is there, and then you have the attack return for through colors, which is 180 unless you draw till you have 6 cards in hand. You don't have to draw, but you probably want to. It also has 4 retreat, which is bad. You're not playing heavy baton here, as far as I'm aware. I just played this top list actually, so I'll take a quick look at what other lists look like if there's anything crazy that I'm missing here. It wasn't played like an absolute ton, but it was definitely played some. If I can find the deck. But oh no, never mind. It wasn't played that much. It was played by two people. Oh, and they played the same list. Never mind. So ignore that part. Blissey has been played some before. I've actually seen it around the ladder some, and it's kind of cool. Blissey's not like the most iconic deck, but it is not some brand new deck. And again, none of the Pokemon or the cards here are new. I don't think. I don't think any of them are particularly new. But Blissey EX has all those different things going for it. So now we need to talk about how it can use these things. Of course, high HP is good, always, but specifically it's good with Monkey Dory. Monkey Door is a really interesting Pokemon. It allows you to, if you don't know if it has a darkness attached to it, then you get to move 3 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to one of your opponent's Pokemon. This is healing and it's also damage. However, you need a darkness energy on it, and most decks don't just have like these random extra attachments. For example, I think Monkey Dory in I think every deck in the top 10 outside of Gardevoir, it's kind of sketchy in. I think it's worthwhile in Feraligatr, though. That's a slower deck. I think in the rest of the decks, it's okay. I guess in Trapgos, it's not really a big issue, but it's not like super beneficial. And I think in something like, say, Calodon or Dragapult, where it is sometimes played in, I think it's pretty bad there because you can really struggle to get the energies on, and you're not always surviving hits. These decks do have a decent amount of tankiness, though, so you definitely can be surviving hits. That's not the big issue. The big issue is the energy. But Blissey has the HP to survive hits, and it has the ability to move the darkness energies around to different Monkey Dories. And that will allow you to go ahead and use multiple Adrenabrains without having all this extra energy on the board. You can get extra energies on the board through the use of the it doesn't play Crispin. You could play Crispin. That seems like solid, but it does play TM Turbo Energize, which accelerates 2 energy from your deck. Your Pokemon Chansey's Lucky Attachment attack also does, though that's like not great. But anyways, TM Turbo Energize is actually pretty integral to the deck. You may even just be using it at random points throughout the game. Not that you really want to be doing that, but I think I did do it. I played quite a few games of this, and I did use that. Then it also has some different Pokemon. Also, I'll mention that Monkey Dory attacking is okay. This is a bit of a disruptive deck. Obviously, of the healing with the Monkey Dory. You also have Rigid Band to take less damage, and then you can confuse. Confusion isn't very good, but I'll quickly talk about the deck's matchups, and I'll talk about it right now, I guess. Specifically regarding the healing aspect, which is like the really a core part of the deck. Looking across the board at these top 10 decks, even a little bit lower, but these top 10 here, they aren't really taking one shots all the time. Notably, the two I believe most played decks are Gardevoir or Dragapult, and I believe Gardevoir is the next deck. I'm not sure, but that's what I think. That's what I've like heard and seen. Gholdengo's played a bunch as well. Gholdengo I don't think is super strong, and then Raging Bolt's also played. Raging Bolt's the one. Raging Bolt I see a lot more than Gholdengo as well. Gholdengo is played some. It's a strong deck. It's a high rolly deck. It has serious inconsistencies, and then like the Hero Box is also played. I mean, there's a bunch of decks that are played a bunch, but the like stage twos and just a lot of the decks aren't one-shotting you. Gardevoir can one-shot you, but they're using a lot of resources to do so. But if they do, then they're not leaving damage on your board, so you can't Monkey Dory. That's a bit of an issue. And then with Raging Bolt and No, with Raging Bolt, you can't wall that. Gholdengo, you can't tank it. Gholdengo, you can wall using Cornerstone Mass Ogre Pontiacs, though. So that's really nice. It's not like a build around. I wouldn't actually hate seeing a second one in here. Raging Bolt seems really sketchy for this deck, though. I feel like against a lot of the things, like the decks that are being slower using Monkey Dory, or like Dragapult EX, where they're just not taking knockouts and leaving damage on your board, then you could use a bunch of Monkey Dories. There's not really anything they can do to stop you. They can't knock out your Pokemon before you're set up, and so you're just fine in that regard. You also have Roaring Moon EX here to take a one-shot. I think Roaring Moon EX is a pretty easy slot into the deck because obviously it has it can one-shot at anything, right, with its Frenzy Gouging attack, though it damages itself a lot, so it's just going to get knocked out, but that is what it is. It takes the knockout, which can be what you need. I mean, the deck is also weak. It's not horribly weak. It's like fairly strong once you account for a bunch of Monkey Dory damage, which you can get. But without that, it's weak. It's not, again, horribly weak, but it's 180, right? That's not that much. And then the Fighting Ogre Prime, though, is really good. I feel like it's kind of core to the deck in my playing. Unlike Roaring Moon. I thought Roaring Moon was going to be something I'd use a bit more, and I just like never used it, essentially. But some counter to Raging Bolt could be nice because, again, it is played a bunch. Overall, the other matchups felt fine, though. I could see this deck rising up some In the A tier, or the A plus tier, the like best decks are not like absurdly broken, but they're quite good. It's certainly not at that level. I think it could rise to the A level decks though. They are very strong, each and every one of them, but Blissey EX is also it does a lot of potential. It's different, but it kind of fits in with the metagame of like the slower metagame. Raging Bolt's not slow, but it's slower than it was, and it is able to adapt to slower games. And then the others are all definitely slow here. And then Goldengo and like Goldengo, Feraligatr, and Blissey, they're all like kind of weird decks. Goldengo is explosive and inconsistent. And then you have, and it has like I guess you can get this like essentially guaranteed really good turn using Energy Search Pro, but that's just one turn, which is a substantial part of the game, but it is only just one turn. And then Feraligatr obviously has I've talked about it a lot, but it's got a lot of options. It's really inconsistent, and it's a really weird deck, but it's a really cool deck with a lot of untapped potential. It's really hard to play deck as well. I have played it a bunch. I am certainly not playing it ideally either. So in order to optimize it, you need to get like really good at that deck. But it is very good if you get to, or it's good when played well and with good lists. I think again, I've seen like Precious Trolley in some lists, and I think that's I mean, I don't like Precious Trolley, right? But um, I feel like it's not good for Alligator. Randomly speaking of Precious Trolley usually never works for me. It happened to work in like I think every game I played with this deck, or almost every game. That was probably a little bit lucky that it worked so well, but it's still really good. That turn one Arvin is like what you're looking for the Precious Trolley, and then Team Turbo Energize, and then you're just going. If you miss that, I don't know how it's going to go. You need the energy on the board. That's what EXP shares here. I wouldn't actually hate a second one, though it's not needed either. I wouldn't say I'm not sure. Again, I haven't played this deck a ton. I've played it some. Um, but the deck feels fun. The deck feels pretty good, though not absolutely insane. But definitely a deck to keep an eye out for. Also, in terms of playing against this deck, if you can't do more than like 180 or something like that, or if you just do like 200 every turn, you're not going to be able to ever get through this, assuming they like set up, which they don't need anything insane to set up. They need some Monkey Dories and they need some Blissies. And they might add a Cornerstone Massacre Refining EX on top of that, which you can't even deal with. I mean, maybe you can. It obviously depends. Ogre Pond, I will say, isn't a card that everyone needs to be able to, always need to play against. It's a card that's played some. It's played not exactly core, but it's like played a bunch in some of these, in a handful of these decks, and then it's like played as attack in some of the decks as well. It's certainly not a card that, if it's a card you auto lose to, that's like not ideal, but it is what it is. And you could text something in to beat it. Another Ogre Pond to like, it obviously doesn't exactly counter itself because um it could be like even against itself, but that could, improve things for you potentially. Um, if you need to play against this card for other decks, but it's a good card in the game. It definitely walls some good Pokemon. It obviously isn't going to wall everything, and there are times when it just doesn't really do anything, but it can be nice, and it's again really good in the deck. Um, and then the deck plays like heavy supporters as well. Return the draw engine. The draw is like kind of sketchy for this deck. I played Blissey some in the past, and I played again, obviously, and the return is not a super reliable attack. I mean, once it's going, it's solid and consistent, but before it's going, you're not doing anything, right? So it's kind of weird. It's like not the way you want it. You'd rather be drawing cards before you're set up, then you don't need to worry about it as much once you are set up. But that's not how it goes here with Blissey EX. So the draw is definitely probably the sketchiest part of the deck. And then again, being like one-shotted by stuff is also pretty bad. Again, I think it could move up the tier list a little bit. It is like consistent, which these other two decks aren't. So I could very easily see it making its way into the A tier here, the like core group of good, strong decks. Though I just don't think it's quite there yet. Then the other deck here that we really need to talk about. This one I think is a bit less interesting to talk about, but I will still talk about. Or is it less interesting? I don't know. I think it's worse, certainly. This is the Joltic Box, or it's this deck. I call it Lightning Box is generally what I've called it before. This deck's kind of interesting. It relies on Joltik with its attack and Jolting Charge, which we've seen used some in the past. And what it does is it lets you search deck for up to two basic lightning and grass energies, two basic lightning and two basic grass, so four energies, and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like. And then you have some different attacking options. You have lightning stuff. You have Miraidon EX, Iron Hands EX, and you have Pikachu EX as well. Iron Leaves EX is good sometimes. It's not always good. And then also plays Liz Clefairy EX and Psychic Energies, and it plays a bunch of Crispin. I'm not gonna lie, when I play this deck, I just played it a few times, but I found I just like completely whiffed on like everything, which is kind of bad. I know I got unlucky. So I think the deck though does have like not the most insane consistency. I mean, there's a lot going on here. And then you're kind of relying on Joltik to attack, and then Joltik's like really weak. And 30 HP, obviously, Badoo's really good at 30 HP, but this certainly is not Badoo. So Jolting Charge leaves you kind of vulnerable. Also, you probably have a bunch of energy on one Pokemon. Um, or you might be like filling up your bench with a bunch of like lightning Pokemon using Rhydon EX plus two more Pokemon. Again, it's not like the biggest deal in the world. You're not playing all these Pokemon. Like if you needed to, could play Aerial Zero Under Depths. You don't need it, so you don't play it. But still, there are some like inconsistencies with the deck, notably in like the middle game where you need to play Crispin, or you need like there's four Crispin, four Boss, four Arvin, and one Iona. That's like a really weird supporter lineup. The Blissey list played was like four Boss, four Arvin, 3 to research, some more, draw heavy here. Crispin and Boss in the mid game are both good, but you can't play both of them, and you're certainly not able to play that, like all three of your four of supporters in a turn. So, where are you getting the draw? Maybe Pheasant Dip EX, maybe Mew EX, probably not Mew EX, but Pheasant Dip EX is good, but it's not always there. Your opponent might target it down. Your Pokemon aren't insanely strong. You look at Iron Hands EX, it's good sometimes, but it's not always good, right? It's a Pokemon that's like a bit of a tech Pokemon. It's a more versatile tech Pokemon than most. You can always use Arm Press for 160, which is, more or less fine against most things, but it's not insane. Miraidon EX is certainly not the most reliable attack. You can attack back to back, but it's all right, but nothing amazing. Pikachu EX, certainly not the most reliable attack. You discard three energies when you attack with it. It's really strong at times, and it's really terrible in others. Pikachu EX is a Pokemon that, again, it's like kind of broken when it's attacking because it's super strong and it's a basic and it has a great ability sometimes. And so that's really nice. But again, you don't have this like attacker that has like high HP and good damage that's easy to power up. I mean, what deck really has that? I don't know, like the Stage 2s, right? The Stage 2s are like that. Blissey EX is like that. They're not quite as easy to power up. Notably, you need to, evolve them, but they are still really, really like solid on the board. And with this deck, you kind of need to be setting up a new attacker pretty consistently. I'm kind of relying on a bit of a slower metagame. The deck's not bad, though. You have these different really strong attackers, which is really good, and so you can kind of adapt to different situations. Overall, I'd say the deck's pretty similar to Box, except for the big downside that it doesn't have an engine. However, it gets all this energy on the board and can use Iron Hands EX better than really any other deck in the game right now, which can be really good. Iron Hands can take extra prizes, which is obviously good. And then uh that's that Pikachu can be good. I feel like the deck doesn't have quite the upside of other decks, um especially like these toolbox decks. Like you look at Box, which has more attackers that can be powered up a little bit easier. You need to kind of get a good setup to be able to attack with them. Again, your opponent won't always be able to, like, sometimes they'll be able to interrupt it, but sometimes they won't. And sometimes you can just go in with Iron Hands EX and take a bunch of prizes in a row and your opponent can't do anything about it. It can, consistently get off that first attacker, and that first attack, depending on what that attacker is. But after that, it might fall off, and you might also miss things in the early game. Um, but again, overall, the deck's solid. It's interesting. I'm really interested in hearing thoughts down below on both of these decks. I will talk about a couple of other decks here. Oh, that I think are also potentially that are played a bunch. But again, those two are the most interesting. The other ones that are played a bunch that are, I guess I'll talk about Flareon. Flareon is still, I've said it before, it's not super good. I played it some. It's also kind of like a worse Box. I'd say it's worse than the the Joltic Box deck, but I don't think they're, again, I have them in the same tier here, but these like lower tier decks are in like, you know, they're not as clearly ranked to me, so I could definitely see moving them around some. And then you have the Roaring Moon deck, as I said, I think it's interesting. I'm gonna mess with it some. I don't really know how good it is. Not gonna lie. It's like it seems kind of like a worse Raging Bolt slash like Terror Box. I mean, it's just like big basic deck and does have like some like Ghidorah stuff probably going on with it as well. It's definitely kind of interesting, but also kind of weird. So again, I'll get back to you on that. And it has the poison stuff, which it can also do, which again, that is pretty interesting. But I mean, this list plays like Energy Sticker. I don't know if most do. Oh, most don't. But you don't have Dark Patch, right? So that's kind of bad. And then the last deck worth mentioning, I guess, would be the Frostlass deck. Frostlass is kind of interesting. I've kind of talked about some with like hops, but they're different. So Frostlass Monkey Dory is really interesting. This is actually kind of like the hop stack, and in some ways kind of like the Blissey deck with a lot of Monkey Dory stuff going on, but not like insane massive damage like Gardevoir, which is using Monkey Dory to just burst crazy damage onto the board. Yeah, no, Blissey is stronger though. This is not really doing any damage. You're using probably Badoo, you could be using Rakdos, you could be using like some attacker that does some spread damage, but again, you're not doing insane damage. You're relying on the game slowing down, getting energies on your Monkey Dory as well, and just some different things. The deck is okay. Maybe I don't really need to be talking about this deck to be honest, but I figured I'd mention it. It's kind of fun, right? But overall, my top 10 did change within the matter of a few days by these two swapped. Though again, the tiers within the tiers are pretty close, but Blissey is really interesting. But again, I'm really interested in hearing your thoughts down below in the comments about this. But consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, all the good stuff. We got a bunch of really cool stuff planned. It's about DLC because DLC is coming alive, kind of sorta. But I hope you enjoyed, and as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.